right, Chris, welcome to the WealthTech Podcast. I am happy to have you on. This is going to be a great show. We got a lot to dig into. I wonder if you could just kind of do a quick introduction about who you are and who you work for.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. And before I dive into that, just want to thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to reconnect and chat with you. So for everybody listening, I am Chris Dickson. I lead RSM's family office advisory practice. I have been working in the family office space for my entire career, about 14 years. I started as an auditor. So I'm a CPA by trade, and I got hired out of school to work at a regional accounting firm in the Philly suburbs, focused on the wealth and asset management industry. And I was lucky enough to have a few family office clients. And then because I had a few family office clients, got recruited to join Ernst& Young as they were building out their family office advisory practice. Spent about 6 to 7 years there, and then got recruited to join RSM about a year and a half ago and really focused on building out their family office advisory capabilities and enhancing their broader family office offering. So it's a pleasure to be here and happy to dive into the details.
Great. I mean, that's John Carroll, Paul McKibben, couple legends there that
Oh, for sure.
you're working with. Um, tell me about your journey within the family office space. How did that begin? And then, obviously you've kept your whole career within the family office space. What do you love about the space?
Absolutely. I'm not gonna lie. I really didn't even know what a family office was growing up or going through college. It's not like there's a family office 101 in most universities that they teach you about. So my real first foray into it was when I was at that regional accounting firm, and I just happened to have a few family office clients, and I just thought everything they were doing was awesome. I mean, family offices can do amazing things in areas where they focus, from a venture capital, broader investment, philanthropy, and an impact on the community. So when I had the opportunity to join EY, I really leapt at that opportunity. One, I also audit really wasn't for me. I didn't really want to spend my whole career there. So I jumped at the opportunity to go more on the advisory consulting side. And then I just doubled down. I mean, like I said, family offices can do amazing things. And what I love most about them is every day is something new. I mean, there's that old adage, right? If you've seen one family office, you've seen one family office. And like that's partially true and untrue at the same time. Because if it was fully true, then consultants wouldn't exist because consultants require some kind of mega
Right.
trends or some commonalities to exist. So consultants do exist because there are mega trends, but it's the family, their dynamics, their behaviors, their personalities, what they're trying to achieve in the family office and how they want to go about doing that is so vastly different. So while there might be common activities, the way in which those get applied in the family office is unique, family office to family office. So every day is something new, and that's what I love most about it.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. I think they're unique. I think also that the complexity that family offices have to deal with as part of their operating environment, given that they're small businesses, right? Even a large family office is 40, 50 people. Typical family office is much smaller than that. And given what they're managing and giving the breadth and depth of services that they're managing, it's really complex. I would also agree with you on the not every family office is a unique snowflake, right? There are different commonalities across them. Although,
Mhm.
obviously, one of the reasons people have family offices is for a certain degree of customization. Given that they manage a complex portfolio and have a lot on their plate, how should family offices think about outsourcing? Where should they look to outsource? Obviously, they can't do it all. Um, what where do you advise, and what's your take on how family offices should approach outsourcing?
It is hard because it's going to be more art than science. Like I said, family offices do amazing things in areas that they want to specialize, in areas that they want to focus. And for the most part, the areas that they want to focus are really on the investment side, the philanthropy side. So they build in-house teams to really sort of manage those aspects. They might co-source and have outsourced partners that they leverage from an investment due diligence standpoint. But for the most part, they like to build the investment function or the philanthropy aspects of what they're doing in-house. Where they don't necessarily like to focus is on the business of the business. And what I mean by that is building out a really robust accounting and finance team. Some family offices do that. Others prefer to kind of outsource those aspects to third-party firms that have maybe already made the capital investments in technology that they have. Most don't like to build a full IT department within their family office. They may have done that at their operating company, and they may not want to replicate that necessarily at the family office. HR is also another area where they might have somebody that's the chief human resource officer. They've been deputized in that capacity, but they don't necessarily want to be doing the day-to-day payroll processing or the benefits administration. So where we tend to see where most family offices tend to outsource is really what we would consider to be those back office operations, those accounting, finance, bill pay services, the tax compliance to a certain extent. They'll keep the tax planning in-house and they might keep a few tax directors in-house, but leverage third-party firms like RSM or the Big Four to really do the tax work paper preparation. And then also outsource their IT, cybersecurity, and their HR services. So that way they could really focus their dollars and their people on really making the greatest impact that the family wants to make, whether that be investments, philanthropy, or really whether they just want to build an in-house team that's focused on really client service. So focused on servicing the family, whether that be their travel planning, their events, the next gen education. So keeping more of that front office client facing roles in-house.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? What's the mission of the family office? Focus that core in-house and then outsource some of the other capabilities. The business is a business. I love that. I think obviously one of the things that every family office should be thinking about outsourcing is cyber, right? Don't assume that IT is taking care of it, that it's such a unique, specialized, just to stay on top of it, that you probably should have a specialized firm that focuses on nothing but cyber. Um, what about RSM runs an annual survey on operational excellence. Uh, Operational like alpha is really important, and I think family offices at times can struggle around that, especially when it comes to technology management and some of the more core
Mhm.
capabilities. What does the survey show, and what separates kind of the high performing family offices from some of the others?
So I think I love that question first and foremost because often people hear operational excellence and they say, well, what should I be doing and how should I be doing it? And that's not really what operational excellence is all about. So our former fearless leader, who unfortunately is no longer with us, Tony Wood, used to say that operational excellence is really about the effective use of people, process, and technology. And that's what I think is really important. I want to focus on is the effective use because there's not a one size fits all. There's not going to be a silver bullet that says this is the way you need to do it or how you should do it. It's really more about the mindset, right? So have you defined your policies, procedures? Are you applying those consistently? Are they clear and do your people understand them? Is there confidence in execution? So I like to always go back to that patient capital and that operational confidence mindset. So in order for the family to want to keep their capital together and invest together, yes, there needs to be harmony amongst the family, but there also needs to be operational confidence that when they are relying on this family office to do the things they're trying to achieve, that the family office is going to do that effectively. It's going to be doing it efficiently. And when a member of the rising gen wants to see a financial statement or they want to see an investment performance report, if it takes that family office 2 to 3 weeks to pull that information together, that rising gen member is going to be wondering, well, why do I have this family office? Why are we funding this? Why are we spending this money? I can go on to my applications on my phone, log into TD Bank or Citi and sort of see what
Right.
my cash statement is or see what my investment portfolio is via Fidelity. So they want more access to real-time information, and not every family office is ready to do that yet. And that's where operational excellence comes into play. It's more of the mindset. It's that continuous improvement. It's that moving forward and not looking back and staying in the past. It's doing that next best thing. What's that one thing we can do to shore up our operations? What's that next hire? Can we start thinking about succession? Should we outsource certain things? It's more of a mindset around continuous improvement. And I think the firms that do it and do it well are those that have defined their vision for the family office. What are the services it's going to provide? How is it going to provide those? And then what's the people, the process, and the technology that we're going to need, not only today, but in the future to be able to do that? And it's just moving in that direction. So every year, every few years is an opportunity to rethink that vision. Most don't do it until there's a generational transition. And at that point, you're leaving it up to the next generation and those owners to really set that stage. And if they haven't had to participate or engage in the family office to that extent in the past, it can create some uncertainty for those both within the office and outside.
I mean, a lot of times you don't see the family offices really surviving, right, to the next generation. And there's a variety of
Yeah.
reasons for that. It's not all around operational excellence, but I think certainly, you know, putting a report out 60 days after quarter end and in a kind of a, thick PDF binder, those days are kind of gone. And I love this approach of, this Kaizen approach where you just try to get better every day, is a worthy goal. When it comes to tech stack, obviously family offices really struggle with technology, and getting their technology in line up with their operational profile. How can family offices make better decisions when it comes to technology, and how can they get better results from technology?
So I think technology is always going to be a challenge to a certain extent within the family office space. It's been a challenge. I think it'll continue to be a challenge. And that's because the nature of technologies and the nature of what it needs to solve for in the family office space is complex. At any given time, there's five different types of accounting that needs to be performed within a family office. Your traditional financial accounting, your double entry accounting, your accounts payable. But most family offices live and breathe on tax. So there's tax basis accounting that
Right.
needs to be done. Then you're throwing the portfolio accounting in place for their marketable securities and their liquids. And you had a very fantastic conversation with the folks from Arch just a couple weeks ago that talked about the complexity with alternatives and accounting for that and data management around that. So you've got financial accounting, you got tax accounting, you got portfolio accounting, both liquid and
Partnership
illiquid.
accounting, right? Throw that in
Partnership
the
accounting,
mix.
everything
Right.
exists in tiered ownership structures. So to be able to flow everything up and then do the allocations, particularly if they've got a lender profits interest model in place, can be highly complex. And then for those that, might have a private trust company or might have family members serving as trustees or the family office executive serving that capacity, you might have trust accounting that needs to be done, fiduciary accounting. So at any
Right.
given time, five different types of accounting. Then you throw the performance reporting across a multi-asset class portfolio and the risk analytics around that, five different types of accounting, and then the performance and risk. So it's always going to be challenging. So when we like to focus on setting up a family office de novo, we really focus on what are the services you want that family office to be doing. That gets tied into really what is the purpose of the family office? And then what is your investment philosophy? How are you trying to deploy this capital that you have? And we can connect them and they can have conversations and we'll loop in their investment advisors because we're not an RIA. We can't provide those services. But we begin to have those conversations because depending upon their asset class and how they want to deploy it, certain technology is better than others. If you're in alternatives, right, do you need an Arch? Do you need a Canoe to support on that data aggregation? If you're heavy in privates, does an MSCI or the old Burgess Caissa make a little bit of sense in terms of what it can do from a scenario planning and J curve analysis standpoint? Do you need an Adapar, which is going to be really kind of a leading platform from a multi-asset class performance standpoint? So depending upon your asset allocation and the asset classes you're willing to invest in, that can inform the investment book of record decisions. On the accounting side, it's how many entities you're going to have. Is multi-entity accounting going to be important? Should you be thinking about maybe elevating out of a QuickBooks and going into a multi-entity accounting system like a Summit or an Aseta or a Sage Intacct or a Microsoft Dynamics Business Central? And if you're going that route, now you've got multiple systems. Is that really the path you want to go down to? Do you want to worry about the data flows and the integrations and the reconciliations that might need to occur? Are you comfortable kind of diversifying your vendor risk in that way? And is that something you're willing to do as a pro and then manage the con of the data flow and the data integration between the systems? And if you're not, then do you maybe want to consider an all-in-one or a comprehensive solution like an Archway or an Eaton or a Fund Count? So we spend a lot of time focused on not just what are the services, what are the asset allocation and reporting requirements, but also what is your risk philosophy? Do you prefer to diversify your vendors? Are you comfortable having vendor risk in just one vendor in place that's responsible for all of this accounting and reporting? And then from there, it's just the selection process based on their requirements. And that's where I think hiring a consultant can be very beneficial because we talked about it earlier. Family offices tend to be lean and mean in terms of their headcount. And if you've been in if you're a family office executive, you may have been in another family office, you may have been in maybe two or three, or maybe you just came out of the MFO world or the banking world. You may not have gone through a lot of technology selections and implementations. You may not have seen 10, 15, 100 family offices. So it's important to get a consultant, at least in my mind. I know that's a little bit self-serving, but we have requirements databases. We've seen hundreds of family offices. We know what works, what doesn't work, what technology platforms they leveraged. So in sort of maybe shortcutting the vendor selection, based on all of that, we can identify the two, three, or four systems that they should really evaluate up front and really accelerate that process a little bit more. So I think
Yeah, I
that's
think that
probably
makes
the
sense.
approach.
One is I thought that was a great breakdown of the considerations around best of breed versus comprehensive solutions. Like I said, there's no one right answer, right? It depends on the firm's technology personality. Are they comfortable
Yep.
with maybe going with one vendor, or the vendor management risk? They want to diversify that, but then they're having to manage multiple vendors and making sure those integrations are working properly. I certainly think getting help, getting a guide. Family offices aren't doing this on a regular basis. If you can use a consultant that is doing search, selection, strategic planning on a regular basis for family offices, that's a great use of being able to try to leverage that expertise. When it comes to search and selection in particular, what are some of the common mistakes that you see firms make when it comes to selecting a vendor?
So I tend to see two. So the real two mistakes that I tend to see is that they just go into it sort of demos. Like they just go in and they just start with that market scan. They haven't started with their requirements. They're looking at an Addepar and comparing that to a Sage Intact, or
Right,
they're
right.
looking at a Sage Intact and comparing that to a fund count. So it's sort of going into these demos and looking at apples and oranges and bananas instead of apples to apples, right? Maybe I want to take a look at that Macintosh and compare that to the
They're
Galaxy.
looking at
Right?
apples to bicycles sometimes.
Exactly,
So yeah.
exactly. So I think that's part of it is sort of without defining those requirements and without that broad understanding of that technology landscape, they tend to just go scattershot. They tend to just see the platforms that are out there and go directly to the demos. And when you go directly to the demos, the fintech providers are putting their best foot forward. They're going to show you what they want to show you, and you're going to get a perception that this is what that system is and what its capabilities are. And is that really what its capabilities are? What are the pros, cons, and challenges that those systems have? So I tend to like family offices to take that step back, be a little bit more strategic, really define their requirements up front, and then use that to funnel down on what the solutions out there could be. So start requirements, then go to demos, not demos to kind of back into your requirements. The second is I tend to see I've got a pain point. I want to solve this pain point. So I'm going to put this bill pay system into place or this expense management system into place. Or I may have gone the all-in-one comprehensive route, but I'm not getting the reporting I need. So I'm going to layer in this other reporting tool. So I tend to still see those that are looking more for point solutions. And by looking just at the point solutions and not really taking a step back to be like, well, what are we really trying to do from a technology standpoint? What family office are we trying to be 5, 10 years down the line? They're getting themselves into situations where they've now got 5, 6, 7, 8 different accounting systems or reporting systems or expense management systems, and none of them are integrated. They're not talking. So
Right.
now they've got a lot of disparate point solutions that there's no integration. They're just doing manual processes around that. So that's the second is sort of just solving for short-term pain points and not considering the larger picture that the family office is and taking that more of a technology strategy approach.
Yeah, I think those are two great points. I think, if you do see that sometimes they do want to drive right into the demo, and you get caught up in the shiny object syndrome, right? Where,
Yeah.
maybe you veer off, and because the vendor's going to show you, their best foot forward, as you said, and you can be like, oh, that's really cool. And next thing you know, you're drifting on why you originally started the search process. I think one is having some sort of technology roadmap to be able to define, where you're going in 3, 5 years. It doesn't have to be a detailed execution plan. It's more of a North Star, right? Directionally, this is where we're going, and you adjust that over time, and it's a living, breathing type of document.
You
I think
definitely have to
second,
adjust it over time because technology evolves so quickly.
right,
So, and we're not expecting when we do these roadmaps or these strategy sessions, we're not expecting the family office to pull the trigger on 4 or 5 different technology platforms right away, right? It's a staged approach, it's sequence. So maybe focus on this system. And then you know what? Here's the system we're recommending now based on your requirements, but a year from now, when you're going to be looking to implement this or deploy this, maybe rethink it a little bit, have that conversation with that tech platform again, see if anything's changed. So it's more of that North Star, as you mentioned, that you're constantly working towards. Because look, if you want to implement a performance reporting risk analytics system, and you don't have a general ledger, maybe implement the general ledger first. Your financial institutions and your advisors you may be able to leverage them for the performance reporting. They'll have their own instances of performance reports. You can get that. Granted,
Yeah.
it's their instance. You have to rely on them to give you the report. You may not be able to highly customize it, but you can meet ends meet in the short term as you're getting your ducks in a row on other solutions. So there's always workarounds that can be done as you're moving towards that North Star.
Yeah, it's a good point. There is a sequencing. Sometimes you need to get other building blocks in place before you can do auxiliary systems, or to your point, maybe you need to get the accounting in place first before you get the performance measurement in place. I think when it comes to individual search and selection to defining that problem and what success looks like up front before getting the vendors involved is really important. I mean, there's two things that you need to see through is one is that is it a good sales process, but maybe not a good product fit, right? That can be tough to discern. The flip side, you see it once in a while too, is that there can be a good product fit for your organization. Maybe the sales process wasn't as great. And how do you see through that? Certainly, I think again, a consultant can help guide a firm through some of those type of things. But having defined up front, what are the pain points you're trying to solve? What does success look like? How do you measure it? Have those things defined up front before you get into those demos is so important because once that happens, then
Yeah.
you're going down a different path. Let's talk about data independence. This subject's been coming up quite a bit, and I think RSM is a leader in this area. But how can firms own their own data? Why is it important, and is it even possible?
So I definitely think it's possible. Is it easier said than done? For sure. So I think there's a few approaches that can be done. So right, like if you in-house the technology, it's a little bit easier to own that data. Granted, you still need to take a look at the contracts and see what's in place, right? So if you do tend to switch platforms, how can you export that data? In what file format? To what extent? How do I want to migrate this over? So I do think looking at sort of like your data access rights within contracts, regardless of whether you're insourcing or outsourcing your services to a third party provider is important. So one, I always like to say start at the contracts. The second way I like to think, and where I'm seeing a lot of family offices begin to explore today, is really around the concept of a data warehouse. And maybe it's more of a data warehouse light. So it's more about focusing on, hey, I might have these disparate systems, and some may be integrated, some may not be integrated, but I've got these underlying source systems. Maybe I've got Yardi because I'm heavily focused on real estate, but I've got a Sage Intact and I've got an Adapar, and maybe I've got Knowledger in place to help move data between them. Maybe I don't, but they've got these underlying source systems and they're doing what they're intended to do. But now I've got really good data in one, I've got really good data in a second, and really good data in a third. What if I want to swap one of those out? Like, what's going to happen? Am I going to lose that data? How am I going to migrate it? So we're seeing a lot of family offices begin to think about putting a data warehouse in place. So that way they're getting data from these underlying source systems, normalizing it, putting it into a location, and then being able to generate reporting on top of that. So to me, I think that's going to be the greatest way to own and have that data flexibility, because then you can unplug a source system, right? You can swap that out and plug something in, but you've already migrated that data and normalized it into a data warehouse that supported your reporting. So it makes that data migration a little bit easier. Maybe when you put that next system in, you don't need to worry. You just focus more on the opening balances. You don't have to necessarily worry about, do I want to bring 2, 3, 5 years of data into that because you've already migrated it and brought it into the data warehouse and you're doing your reporting off of that. So it becomes your single source of truth for that historical data and then can be used prospectively. So I think that is going to be the greatest way for family offices to get that data flexibility. And I know that's part of the value proposition of the all-in-ones as well, is in one central location. And I think that's the right step, but there's always ancillary systems. There's payroll
Right.
systems, there's SharePoint, there's other
Yep.
operational and workflow systems. Data from there can be brought into that data warehouse as well. And you can do not only financial KPIs, but operational KPIs. So I think that's
I
important.
think that's a great point. I think one is, you talk about being able to minimize some risk, uh, consolidated holistic reporting. I think, being able to put an AI layer on top of that versus having
Yep.
independent AI point solutions can be able to give you a lot greater insights as well. Let's talk about AI a little bit. I mean, how can you not? It's the biggest trend in it's not even just family office. It's
It's
just one of the
everywhere.
biggest technology trends, period. AI hype and reality. How should family offices be thinking about AI? What should they do to prepare for adopting AI? And, you know, where are we at in the AI journey?
So you know I've talked about this before, and at least throwing out the baseball metaphor, right? So where are we? Are we in the first inning? Are we in the third inning? Are we in the seventh inning when it comes to
Yeah.
AI? I tend to like to think we're in batting practice. We're in the warm up. We're getting started, at least from a family office standpoint. And the reason why I say that is because it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You have fintech providers that are already embedding AI into their platforms. It's happening. It's sort of like the cloud conversation back in the on-prem to cloud conversation back on the day. A lot of family
Right.
offices were focused on-prem. That's where they thought the greatest security was. But they were already going to the cloud because the fintech providers were stopping supporting the on-prem
Right.
versions. Nowadays, not many are doing that. So they've sort of brought them there. I think the fintech providers are going to bring the family offices to AI. It's just a matter, but it's going to be done embedded within certain business applications, right? So it's going to be embedded within your general ledger. It's going to be embedded within your alternatives data aggregator. It's going to be embedded within your performance reporting solution. And you're going to be able to drive really great insights within the data that's in each of those systems, but it's not necessarily going to be pervasive across all business applications unless maybe you do go the business or you go that data warehouse route. So why do I say that we are in batting practice? Because it's happening, but there's a lot of education that needs to be done, and there's a lot of cleanup that needs to be done prior to really being able to leverage that AI. Uh, AI just for business process improvement and efficiency purposes. So I think there's education that needs to be done not only to family members, but the family office executives in terms of really what is AI? How does it differ from robotics process automation? What are the different what are the different types of AI, right? Are we talking about generative AI or something else? What are going to be the pros and cons and the challenges associated with that? When is it safe to use it, right? Like if I'm in a family office, can I use ChatGPT? Well,
Right.
maybe, but I wouldn't put my client information in there. I wouldn't put
Yeah, I
tax
wouldn't be
return
loading
data
up the
in there.
portfolio, right?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done in terms of what are the benefits, what are the challenges of AI, and then when should we be using it? I've heard instances of where family office executives prepare a really good performance report, send that to the family and to members of the rising gen, and maybe they haven't necessarily engaged in conversations with the rising gen to really kind of assess their financial literacy or sort of their sophistication. And you have the rising gen members putting that into ChatGPT to better understand it, to ask the questions that they want to ask the family office staff. So the education goes best both ways, not only educating the family office teams, but educating the family members on really what data is safe to put into AI platforms and what data is not safe. And then from there, I think there's work to be done on drafting, like just like any good technology use policy within a family office, AI use policies. So that way, those in the office really know what can be done and what the family's philosophy about AI, data security, data privacy is. And then they can go from there. And then I
Yeah,
think
I think
because
that's a
AI is
great
going
point.
to be, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's a great point. They really should get some policies in place because people are going to experiment with it, right? They're going to
Oh,
start
yeah.
using it with it, start playing with it, and they may not be using it in the way that you would be the safest. Such as the example of loading up the portfolio to get some insights on ChatGPT, right?
Oh, for
Go ahead.
sure. And shadow AI usage is happening, right? So like even if you limit their ability to get access to like ChatGPT or other platforms on their work laptop, people got phones, they've got personal devices. People are using ChatGPT or other AI platforms one way or another. So I think really just trying to tackle that head on is going to be important for family offices. So that way their employees know what's expected of them and what's at risk if maybe they tend not to follow that. The other, I think, is just data preparation, right? If you're going to be using AI to derive insights off of your data, you really need to make sure your data is clean. So I think there's a broader data strategy and data governance conversation that needs to happen prior to really deploying AI, right? So how clean is our data? Who has access to our data? Where is our data stored? Where should our data be stored? Because depending on where you're storing that and how clean it is, AI may or may not be able to access it, right? Especially if it's only embedded in point solutions. So I think there's a broader conversation in terms of holistically taking a look at your data and going through that kind of data storage, data retention, data access rights, and permissions management exercise prior to really wanting to deploy AI within your office.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, they're two are related, right? AI is not going to give you the results that you want if you don't have your data clean and accessible and secure. I think batting practice. I like to think that that saying that the future's here is just not evenly distributed. That, as you said, that there are vendors out there that are embedding AI capabilities into their solutions today,
Yep.
which is a great way to do it. It's a secure way, I think, especially around alternative investments, around unlocking unstructured data, converting that into structured information, almost eliminating that first low value, low mile, first mile type of data ag is happening today, which is great. That's too long. These family offices spend too much time just trying to get data out of PDF documents, and
For
AI
sure.
seems great for that. I think in the investment process too, you're seeing with agentic AI, it's amazing some of the capabilities that are out there today that is not, you know, something that's talk about a futurist. Like these applications are in place today. They're providing real value today.
Yep.
And I think it's family offices should should become educated on it, right? What are the policies? How do I protect myself? But then what are the capabilities and how do I modernize? Because I just think like the the capabilities and the efficiencies they're just too great to be able to ignore. And I think your example of cloud migration was it is that kind of wave, and unfortunately or fortunately it took COVID to be able to really get those family offices to migrate to the cloud. In this case, I think it's one of those things where you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by somebody that's using AI.
Yep.
And I think it's imperative of family offices to get educated, to find ways in which they can even experiment with those capabilities in a secure way, because there's so much efficiency that's to be had. So what is next with AI, given that we're in batting practice? When do we take the field, and what do you see as some of the developments that are out there?
So you touched on, I think agentic AI is probably next. And I said batting practice, like that's a broad generalization, right? Like there are certainly some that are in inning two, certainly some that are in inning four. But I think broadly as an industry, we're still very much in that warm up stage. And it's rapidly approaching because the fintech providers are bringing us there. I think immediate next up is better leveraging Gen AI, right? So that's to derive the insights based on the underlying data, or even to use like Copilot to record meeting minutes and meeting
Right.
names that are happening right now. Like that's a great efficiency saver. Maybe I don't need my executive assistant, maybe I don't need my business analyst on every single call taking notes when I can use something like a Copilot to really do that on my vendor diligence or my board meetings that I'm attending. It can really just streamline that. I think that's a good way to kind of dip your toes into the water and get that first at bat. I think that is a way to get people starting to be comfortable with it. But in terms of what do I think is more broadly kind of next on the horizon, I do think it is that agentic AI, because that's really where you're using AI to really kind of automate process and begin to make decisions. But I think when you begin to go that route, you really need to have trust in AI and you really need to understand the process and the data that is going to be deriving those decisions. Because at that point, you're automating it. You might still have human in the loop to sort of review what's been done, but maybe you want to use that to really initiate the workflows around client onboarding, or maybe you really want to use that to really go through the process of setting up your entities and the chart of accounts with those entities, and really maybe beginning to get that structure in place across your business applications. Maybe you want to do it to accelerate the bank reconciliation process, which I mean, realistically is already sort of being done within systems nowadays from an automation standpoint, but there can certainly be improvement there in terms of matching unreconciled expenses to the banks. So I think there's a lot of benefits that agentic AI can do in terms of just sort of automating workflows and beginning to make those lower level decisions. I think it's going to be a while before we're relying on agentic AI to really make recommendations around maybe portfolio rebalancing and then automatically deploy that. So maybe start small is what I would say when it comes to that type of AI.
Yeah, I think that those are all good points. I think agentic AI is the next frontier. I think you're seeing obviously that the note taking capabilities are really good. I mean, what it captures and how it captures it are pretty spot on. And then if you have a meeting with a family member and there are takeaways that come from that family member, obviously that those notes get automatically put into the CRM. The task can be automatically kicked off and initiated. An AI agent isn't going to have something fall for the cracks. It doesn't stop until that task is completed, where sometimes I think the human side, you get busy, sometimes things can fall through the cracks. I do think to your point too, that the decision making, I think that the human in the loop, it's going to be a long time before really AI should be at the reins when it comes to actually making decisions on portfolios or other matters. But the other thing I think too, in terms of kind of condensing large amounts of information, like, what happened with the portfolio over the quarter, like getting that first draft and be able to see that information that can make you remind you of things that you forgot about that happened maybe earlier in the quarter, and to be able to kind of customize the communication experiences per person or
Yeah.
generation. AI can be good at that, so it can actually even help with communication. So there's there's a ton there's happening on that front. Do you think, obviously the bad guys have access to AI as well? What are some of the latest threats that you see family offices facing when it comes to cyber?
Yeah, so I mean, AI is a double-edged sword, right? So there's a lot of benefits that it can provide in terms of really boosting productivity and creating efficiency within family offices, right? You mentioned its ability to digest large data sets and really derive insights, right? Like, do I really want to read a 90-page legal agreement back to back? Probably not. Do I want to use AI to maybe summarize that and then point out like certain paragraphs that I should really focus on? Yeah. And then if I really want to focus more broadly, I can as well, but at least it can accelerate that process. That's the benefit of AI. The con or the negative aspect of AI is bad guys have access to it as well, right? So like everything it's doing in terms of really making strong deep fakes, like nowadays it's so easy to just use AI to make a video about somebody or to kind of copy their voice for a callback procedure, right? So it really makes it challenging now. It's much more sophisticated, it's much better, and it's much quicker to do these types of attacks. So I think family offices and family members need to be educated on how AI can also enhance the bad guys' processes, right? And really make their attacks not only more targeted, more efficient, and more realistic. I mean, social engineering is it's a whole new ball game nowadays in terms of how they can basically type a message and then automatically tailor that to 10 different personalities or 150 different user profiles and really make targeted, right? So like say I've got Chris Dickson family office and Mark Wickersham as my key vendor, right? AI can really make a really strong video of you, copy your
Yeah.
voice, and then call me to say, hey, can you initiate this wire? Or, hey, I need you to sign this contract for the podcast that you're going to be on, or something along those lines. And it's like, sure, if I'm too busy focused on the work and I just need to do this, I may not take pause to be like, is this real? Like, am I aware of this and the threat enough that I'm going to slow down and, maybe stop doing the Excel model that I'm doing right now to really kind of process whether or not this is a real request or a fake request? I might just push it through. And I think that is the biggest challenge, is because while you can do a lot from an infrastructure and a third party security provider standpoint to really make sure your network, your infrastructure is solid, humans are always going to be the weakest link from a
Right.
cybersecurity perspective. And in the family office world, often they're lean machines. People are moving quickly, and sometimes people don't take that step back to really pause and be like, is this a valid request or should I just push it through? Especially when they've got 50 different priorities that they're juggling. And it is a really good replication of maybe how Mark Wickersham communicates via email.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be the phishing attacks that they were always kind of a little quite off. You can tell maybe they weren't like a native English speaker, and
Yep.
the context or syntax was off, even spelling mistakes. Now this stuff is like it's within tone of the person that you're expecting. You expect that the voice callback used to be the gold standard. Now that could be completely replicated with just a small snippet of actual sound from a person. Obviously, it goes to the point that uh, one, a family office is being targeted, but two is you got to get professional help on this, and constant training, I think, is key. To your point, that the human is the weak link on that. And they need to be trained on the latest threats and how to be able to spot them. Do you think with the promise of AI and the threat from cybersecurity that's going to force the modernization of family offices? As you know, so many family offices are Excel and QuickBooks stuck on kind of
Yep.
retail software or even legacy products that vendors don't support anymore. Is that going to get them off the snide, or is it they're always going to be a subset of that family office population because they are a cost center that um, is going to be resistant to modernization?
I mean, there's always going to be some resistance to change, right? And I think that's going to just depend on the family members themselves and their personalities. Some people are much more open to change. Some people are much more willing to invest. The rising generation is demanding it. So I think not only is AI and cyber threats going to really sort of bring family offices into the future. I think that the rising gen and the next generation family members are also going to bring family offices into the future. And I think in the absence of that modernization, I think we're going to see a lot of generational lift outs of family offices. We're already seeing that nowadays in terms of maybe they're keeping the assets together from an investment standpoint, but the rising gens are creating their own family offices from a tax planning, a concierge service, and eventually an investment standpoint. Investments always do move over time, especially as they begin to disentangle them. You just don't want to take those capital losses right away, right? So you have to really be strategic in how you begin to do that. But I think in the absence of modernization, there's going to be a lot of generational lift outs of family offices, and that's something that we're seeing. The other thing that I would mention around AI in particular is I think it's going to lower the barrier to entry for ultra high net worth individuals into the family office. I mean, historically, I've always said $500 million is the AUM in terms of when a standalone single family
Yeah.
office might make sense. Maybe you don't want to go the MFO route. Maybe you want to stay embedded in your operating company. Maybe you want to go the virtual route. 500 million tends to be a good barometer in terms of when should I create a standalone single family office or when might it make sense from a cost benefit standpoint. Not always true, right? I've seen large family offices that are 400, 350 million, but it tends to be a good barometer. I do think AI is going to lower that barometer to 400, 300 million, whatever it might be, because it's going to create so much efficiencies from an accounting and a personnel standpoint that your overhead cost, your BIPs, your cost as a percentage of AUM is just going to go down.
That's a good point. Like, yeah, that minimum tier had been creeping up over time. 200, 250 million, 250 million. That was like the minimum. And then it seemed like really for a comprehensive family office, it almost seemed like you really needed $1 billion for
Yep.
that to make sense. Obviously, MFOs can have provided
Oh, for sure.
a revenue or certainly a source for family offices that are maybe smaller to get those services or to even partner with family offices. But I think that's a good point that actually AI might be a chance to be able to bring that level back down again. Also, next gen, as you mentioned earlier, the consumerization of IT, right? That what they experience in their day-to-day life on their phone, you go to Fidelity, I can see real time what's happening with my portfolio, how much cash I have, and then you go to your family office and the experience is a lot different. That consumerization IT and what you experience with Amazon and these other things, and then you expect some sort of level of modernization with your family offices. What I hope doesn't happen, and unfortunately it still does, I think to a certain extent, is that they modernize due to some sort of event that some sort of key man had uh, key person risk, and that person departed the firm for whatever reason, and they knew where all the bodies were buried, or there was a cyber attack, or there was a failure around being able to produce tax, or whatever it might be. Unfortunately, you see a lot of family offices that get into a buying mode around technology because some sort of event happened, and I hope that they use this as an example to kind of be a little bit more, get in front of it before something happens, because it's not a big deal until it happens, and then it's a big deal when it does happen, as John Carroll would always say. So
Oh, for sure. And we do a lot of enterprise risk management for family offices as well. And I'm a big proponent of put a risk management framework in place at the get-go, be proactive about it. Similar to cybersecurity, right? Don't just do a pen test. Don't just do forensic remediation in when an event happens, right? Really be proactive about monitoring and managing, identifying, assessing, managing, and monitoring risk within your family office. But it's hard to get there and with some families until an event happens. Risk
yeah,
does tend to be more reactive. Risk management does tend to be more reactive than proactive. Exceptions are always the case, but I would say the same thing, right? Don't just wait for AI to be brought to you. Don't just wait for that rising gen to be asking that question, because it's much harder to play catch up than it is to sort of plan for the inevitability and start making steps, right? So that's why I like to focus on, from an AI standpoint, where should we be? We should be on a data governance and data strategy standpoint. We should really be making sure we understand where the data is, who has access to it, and how we're going to use it. Do that first, and then you're going to be better prepared for when AI is brought to you from the fintech providers or when you want to make that investment in AI yourself.
makes sense. All right, Chris, this has been great. I like to end the podcast on a personal note. Three questions that have nothing to do with Wealth Tech or family office. You recently were in at Disney. What was your favorite ride at Disney?
Favorite ride? So I think the dad in me would say it was the Dumbo ride, or it was It's a Small World, because that's what my kids loved. But I think the 36-year-old guy that's sitting in front of you would say it was most likely Guardians of the Galaxy or Tron. Those were probably
Okay.
my favorite rides.
We used to go to Storyland every year, and I get sick on the teacups, and the kids would be like, "Let's do it again." I'm like,
We
I
did the
can't even
teacups like
stand
three
up.
times.
What's one hobby or skill that you have that people might not be aware of?
So I love food. I mean, if you can't tell by looking at me, I love
You're
food.
a
I love
foodie?
cooking food even
Okay.
more, especially barbecue come the summertime. Like,
Okay.
made investments in the Traegers, have all of that. So you get me out there smoking a brisket over a Friday night into a Saturday. That's really where my passion is. My children and my wife benefit from that as well. So I would say cooking is probably what my secret hobby is. I also like baking as well. During COVID, my wife got me into the Great British Baking Show. So started
Okay.
doing my own breads and everything along those lines. Every Sunday, make a loaf with my daughter so she can have like the fresh bread for PB&J sandwiches through the
Nice.
week. So kitchen is my passion.
Normally, cooks are not good bakers, and bakers are
I didn't
not
say I'm a
good
good baker. I
cooks.
can do bread. I don't
Yeah.
know if you'd trust me with a cake.
Cooking's an art, baking's a science,
Yeah.
as they say. And then what's your favorite thing to smoke?
I would say brisket, ribs, wings, really anything. I love
Yeah.
it all. I mean, I've even done smoked salmon with an avocado salsa on top of that. So I'm all over the
Nice.
place. But I mean, brisket is sort of like that is the North Star. Am I good
That's the
at it?
Super
No.
Bowl,
Do I still have a
right?
lot to go? But I would say I'm better at wings and ribs than anything else.
No, I mean, 8 hours later, and you find out you messed it up. It's like that's
It's
a
pretty
little tough.
unforgiving.
It's good stuff. I do like smoking the chicken wings though. I think it's a quick hit, right? A couple of
Oh
hours, you're
yeah.
done. Um, okay, I know you travel a lot for work. Best and worst airport.
So I'm gonna say the best and worst airport at the same time is probably the Philadelphia airport. It's my home airport. I mean, if you literally look at the rankings, I'm fairly positive it ranks fairly low on the list.
Yeah.
But I love it. It's convenient, it's close by, there's good food options. So to me, like it's just what I know best. So that's why it's the best, but it's also gets a really bad rep. I think if I were to look more broadly than that, I like DFW. It's large. It's a little bit challenging to get across, but I mean, really good barbecue there. So I enjoy that. Chicago O'Hare is also nice in terms of food options. So as you can tell, I base a lot of my airports around where's
Uh,
the food that's available, less about how convenient is it.
I like Chicago because you can take the train into the city and the train comes into
Yeah,
the like so
that is
many
much
airports.
quicker. Otherwise, it's
Yeah,
an hour, right?
like New York, some of these other airports, like just get the train into the airport, right? Just
Yeah.
my God, people. And obviously I think Newark it always sucked. And I know it's in the news as you know, uh, for how much that is. But then a couple other airports, like the New York airports went from worst to first. LaGuardia and JFK are both been modernized. Those both used to be god awful. And they're pretty nice airports now with lots of food options, you know,
Oh,
there's
for
food
sure.
halls now. So, all right, Chris. Well, I'm looking forward to maybe you could do like a book on places to eat in airports. That could be your passion project. So,
Maybe, you know, and I'll add that to my to-do list. My
all
wife is,
right,
she's in marketing and she loves to write, so she can always help me out with that.
there you go. This has been great, Chris. I really appreciate you being on the show, and thanks for sharing your insights.
Of course. Thanks, Mark. It's always a pleasure being on here and appreciate the opportunity to not only connect with you, but to your audience. So thanks again.